Recent data from Statistics South Africa reveals a concerning figure about absent fathers. Only 31.7% of black children stay with their biological fathers. That's compared to 51.3% of colored children, 86.1% of Indian or Asians, and 80.2% of whites. Let's discuss this with Zane Meas. He's the founder of the Fatherhood Foundation of South Africa. Zane, thank you so much for your time this morning. Can you perhaps help us to understand the significance of the figures that we are seeing here and perhaps what your experience with it is?
Yes, Janelle, thank you for having me. That is 2/3 of all children growing up in South Africa today are without a father figure in the house. That is what that statistics you quoted, that is what it equates to, which means more children are now growing up without a father figure in the family than kids who are. And this is causing all sorts of social evils, as we can see. In the area where our offices are and where we operate, for example, Westbury in Johannesburg, well known for its gang violence and shootings, and places like Mitchell's Plain and Lavender Hills and Cape Town, the northern areas in PE. Or if you go and look at these areas, all of these areas there are kids growing up without fathers, without father figures. Mums now have to play two roles. Grannies now have to play mummy and daddy. And so the call for South Africa today is to get men to take their place again, firstly, in the home.
Zane, let's have a look at the cultural and socio-economic factors contributing to disparities in father-child relationships. You mentioned some now, but what are the challenges and circumstances that play a role in these differences?
Well, statistics have proven that kids who grow up without a father figure are far more likely to end up firstly in prison, to end up in gang violence, to end up pregnant at an age when they should not be having children. Teen suicide goes up. All of these social evils are a direct result of missing father figures. The work that we do throughout the country has proven that kids who grow up without a father will grow up with fathers and father figures in the home, present fathers, intentional fathers, have less likelihood of being found in prisons or girls being pregnant before it, or getting involved in gangs. That's a vitally important one, because literally the dad is sort of the gang leader of his family. There's a saying that goes, boys who don't grow up in a gang called family will go to gangs. Hallelujah. That's the saying that it goes. Boys who grow up without father figures will join gangs, because that's where they find their identity. That's where they find they find acceptance. And children at that age, young teenagers, need boundaries. They need guidelines. And if they don't have it at home, they will find it somewhere else. Even going to prison, where you are given a number, 26, 27, 28, you find identity there. This is what happens when there are no fathers available.
Now, Zane, perhaps let me ask you this. When you look at the figures and the vast difference between the figures in your black and colored households and versus your Indian and your white households, in your opinion, what do you think causes this vast difference between fatherless homes and homes where we have people of color and perhaps the white people and the Indians? What plays into that?
Well, it's an historical statistic right there. Back and it goes back a generation and a half to apartheid years, when the black families were separated and moved to these Bantustans, as they were known, Ciskei, Transkei, and all of those. But the fathers were forced to work in the cities. So fathers had to leave their children miles and miles away and then come and work in the big cities. And so mothers and children grew up without these father figures in the home. And this has become a cycle generally that we see in society today, is that boys don't know how to take care of their children because they didn't have someone taking care of them. And so this cycle is just perpetuated generation to generation, and until someone stops it. until someone says this is, and government unfortunately doesn't really talk to the issue of fatherlessness that much. Until we stop that cycle, we are going to see the perpetuation of this, and things are not going to get better. But historically, that is what happened. And so that's why you see that statistic as high as what it is. And even with the coming up in the proliferation of the middle class, black middle class, that really hasn't stopped, because as we've seen in certain races where people do have money and disposable income, is that they think by providing for their children financially, they are being good dads. And that is not what it is. More than the presence and the gifts that you give your children, your physical presence in the home is vitally and far more important.
Do you come across situations in the communities that you work, just briefly, where fathers are saying that they are being denied access to their children? We see a lot of fathers on social media complaining about that trend.
Sadly, that is the case. There are very many men who want to be part of their children's lives, who want to be involved. But unfortunately, especially where the couple are not married, women have become the gatekeepers to access to the children. And so the courts in general will, when there's a dispute or divorce, that the courts will generally give custody to the parent, to the mother. And so mums and the women become gatekeepers, especially if they're not being financially supported. They will become gatekeepers to the access of the children to the dad and the dad to the children. And this, unfortunately, has caused untold grief and sadness, especially for the dads who really want to be part of their children's lives. So we see this this trend happening quite a bit, sadly, generally. Yes, we do.
Perhaps the last question from my side then, Zane, which government policies or community-based interventions do you believe can help bridge the gap in father-child relationships? And could you tell us about the initiatives I know that the Fatherhood Foundation of South Africa has that is aimed at equipping fathers?
There are a number of organizations throughout South Africa who are trying to quell this pandemic, I call it, of fatherlessness in our nation. There are a number of Fatherhood Foundation is just but one of many. And sadly, we are all NGOs and NPOs trying to do the work that government really, we're finding, is not equipped to do and is not doing. There are very many programs. For example, take a girl child to work, etc. Nothing wrong with those initiatives, but there's very few initiatives that are the partner to that, the companion to that, the boy child. Teach a boy child, take a boy child to work, a firm boy child. Very few of those are happening. So we as NGOs, for example, this year, International Men's Day, which is November the 19th, we are having a Dad of the Year award, something we do annually, where we try to promote positive manhood and positive fatherhood by having children write in to say, well, this man, who doesn't have to be your biological father, by the way, this man is a good role model in society, and so therefore we are thinking he should be the Dad of the Year in this particular category. Interventions like that. We've got school programs, social development. At one point before COVID, had very good school programs that were going in, getting kids to talk about their futures and about sexuality and about having children and about manhood and all of those kind of stuff. Things that unfortunately have fallen by the wayside and that have been fallen on our shoulders as the NGOs to try and stem this tide of fatherlessness. But we do what we can with the resources that we have. It's more of a calling, I would say, Jenna, really, than just a job that we do.
Absolutely. And I must say, I'm encouraged when I look at social media, when we see more and more fathers, especially of the younger generation, being involved in the lives of their children. We thank you so much for your time this morning, Zane. That was, of course, Zane Meas. He's the founder of the Fatherhood Foundation of South Africa. I'm looking forward to the Dad of the Year awards that he was referring to right now. This afternoon at 2 p.m. this afternoon, Bradan Moyane and cast members of the TV telenovela Isita, The Enemy, will continue this conversation as they delve into the topic of absent fathers. Crucial conversation. Be sure to tune in at 2 p.m. right here on ENCA DSTV channel 403.